pleased to have with me on Nyberg tonight veteran angler charter captain Kathy Granfield. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Love what you are doing with veterans, people who serve our country. Tell me how this charter service got started, where you get the folks on board that have served our country. How did it start?
Yeah, everybody always asks me that.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I guess I don't look like a typical charter captain, but it's probably because I'm not. I'm actually an 8th grade science teacher, but I was raised in a family of fishermen going back, multiple generations.
How far back?
Great-grandfather, at the very least. That's as far as we know.
In New England, in Connecticut?
Ireland, actually.
In Ireland?
Yeah, originally, and then came over here to the United States at the beginning of the 1900s. So yeah, we've been here for a while. Been fishing for a very long time. So when I started, it was really, I think like a lot of people, I wanted to do something personal. We'd been in Iraq for several years when I first got the idea. And it really was precipitated by a conversation with my dad. It was.
What did you say to him, and what did he say to you?
Well, I think it was 2006 or 07. It was the first year that more service members had come home from combat and taken their own lives than were actually killed in battle.
Suicide rate is high.
And I remember feeling like, what? Somebody do something. Somebody do something. This is not okay. And I had that conversation with my father, and he was like, yeah, somebody should do something. And I was like, yeah, somebody should do something. And he said, yes, somebody should do something. And I was like, oh, you mean me? So he was the one who really said, if you feel that strongly about it, do something about it. But I didn't know what I could do. I'm a teacher. I'm not.
But you're a captain, but you know the sea.
Yeah, and honestly, when you're raised in a family that thinks fishing is the solution to all life's problems, it sort of was a default. I just thought, well, maybe if I take them out on the boat, because I know that for me, when I'm feeling very badly, getting out on the water almost always helps. So I thought, well, maybe it's a possible venue for guys to sort of come home, reconnect with their friends, reconnect with their families, reconnect with other service members who really understand what they've been through in sort of a small, safe environment and doing something fun at the same time.
So tell me about the first trip you took. How did you get the guys, the gals on board? Tell me about the first trip.
It took 2 years, actually, from the idea, from the conception to execution, basically. I had a credibility issue. Nobody knew who I was. So I started cold calling veteran centers. And most of them were, I wouldn't say disbelieving, but they were like,
protective?
Yeah, and again, I'm a civilian. They don't know me. That they don't want to necessarily hand over a group of guys who are just back from overseas onto a boat with a civilian that they don't know. So understandably, there was a long process. But the first trip was June 9th in 2009. It was with the New Haven Vet Center. And 5 of the guys were completely excited about going, and the 6th guy did not want to get on the boat.
Because he was afraid he was going to be seasick?
Yeah, he was afraid he was going to be seasick. So it took a little bit of doing, but we got him on the boat. And it ended up being, it was a sunset bass trip. And we caught a tremendous amount of fish. And it was a time of year that the bass are running that time of year, but it wasn't a good season, so I was worried that we weren't going to catch anything. But we had a great trip. And we came in, and the guys wanted to go again, and the group coordinator who had brought them asked if we could go again. So it sort of snowballed. When I originally started it, I thought I would just do a couple of trips, but I had so many requests that we ended up doing quite a few.
So it's become a passion now.
Yeah, I really do.
And it's 2015 now.
Yes.
I want to take a look at what these trips are like. Let's show the video.
Okay. My name's Kathy Granfield. I am the founder of VA Charters. The boat for today's mission is the Black Mariah. She's a 34-foot Downeaster, custom built in Maine by my dad. And today we're going to be taking a group of veterans out fishing. We have a couple young guys just back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and some older guys, some Vietnam vets with us. And we're hoping to catch some blues and maybe some bass, with any luck. I think, like a lot of people, after the wars went on and on, I was wondering what I could do to help, and I couldn't think of anything. So I talked to my dad about it. He's been a fisherman his whole life, and he said, well, what do you do when you feel bad? You go out in the boat. And it just sort of planted a seed And I started thinking, well, maybe it would help. It'd only be for a day, but maybe just a day out in the water would give them a little bit of relief. And just something nice to do, something to remind them what they were fighting for, and also as a way to say thank you.
So I was a mortarman with Echo Company out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I did a tour in Iraq with them in 2004. We invaded Fallujah. Then in 2006, I augmented over to recon, and I deployed with a reconnaissance platoon. I found out about Kathy's boat from a director of Veteran Affairs at Southern. He told me about it, informed me, and asked me to come check it out, and I did. It's kind of like an escape from reality. I mean, if you look at it, you know, it's kind of hard to be upset at anything while you're out here, you know what I mean? You just forget about all your problems or what you encountered.
Shot by a sniper in Baghdad City. I did most a lot, like raids, cache searches, assisting EOD. I was at the bomb squad for the military. And the first time I heard this, I didn't know it was going to go this deep in the sea. I thought it was going to be probably in the corner of the shore and just have some rods and go fishing. But when I came here the first time, I was like, wow, this is the real thing.
I really want them to have a great experience. I want to get a lot of fish in the boat. I want everybody to have a chance to, reel in a keeper. For guys who don't really want to fish, who just need a little break, I just want to let them get out on the water. Oftentimes they'll sit up with me on the bridge and they don't touch the pole the whole trip. I had one trip where I had two guys out on the bow the whole time. They just sat there and talked to each other. They had just gotten home from Fallujah. And that's what they needed. They just wanted to sit out there and talk, so that's what they did. So my job is just to let them have whatever experience they need to have and want to have.
One of my friends, he's my housemate, he's just back in Afghanistan right now, and he was just home on leave. He would tell me while he was over there, all he would think about are the times that we went fishing, while he's over there in Afghanistan right near the Pakistani border, is he would dream about going fishing because it is so relaxing.
Our mission statement says to offer therapeutic support and recreational rehabilitation, I believe was the word. But honestly, for me, it's a chance to say thank you. It's amazing the change in a group of men, like when they first get on the boat, and they don't necessarily know each other. They come from all different branches of the service, so they come from different conflicts as well.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Yes! Come on!
Bring that up.
Two! He's got a bass and a float.
He's coming,
He's coming. Yes! He got two on.
That's what I was looking for.
Get it, baby!
Not.
Forget this. Yeah! That's a big one. That's what I'm talking about.
Keep you warm. Well, you come out here and you get away from all your problems. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate what they did. And plus, I caught a fish. I had the biggest fish I ever caught in my life.
I think part of the problem is that not a lot of people know that we exist yet. So a lot of our struggle has been to let the public know who we are, what we're doing, and sort of what our mission is.
The fact that they brought us out here is awesome, but their enthusiasm about doing it, that's really cool.
For some reason, going to the beach is not enough. Fishing from shore is not enough. But as soon as the boat leaves the dock, something changes. It's like you've left everything behind. And life just seems much better out there when it's just sort of the water and the wind and the sun and the fish. And I wanted to be able to offer that to them, so that's why I started doing this.
So lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Fishing with a mission. When do you start out every year? When do you go? You go in May?
We usually launch the boat at the beginning of May, and our first trip, depending on the bass run, will often be somewhere around Memorial Day. The bass are usually running pretty hot and heavy by Father's Day, so June and July are very, very busy for us. Slows down a little bit in August when the water starts to get really warm. And then we do a lot of fishing in the fall. September and October particularly are really good months to fish.
Kathy, tell me about the boat you use.
The Connecticut boat is the Black Maria. She's a 34-foot down east. She belonged to my dad. And she is actually Black Maria number 5. There's been 5 in the family. First Black Maria was back in the 1930s, so it's a long tradition. She's named after the Boston Paddy Wagon, in case you were wondering.
Oh, well, there you go.
Because people are always wondering. Yeah.
What do you, how many guys and gals have you taken over these several years?
At this point, I'm not just working by myself any longer. I have a Rhode Island captain who does trips with the Providence VA, and I have a captain up in Massachusetts who does trips with the Boston VA. So between the 3 boats, we do between 30 and 40 trips a year. And each trip takes between 4 to 6 veterans, depending on the boat.
So hundreds by now.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
What is the plan? Do you want to take this nationwide? Just keep it in New England? You obviously want to help as many folks serving our country as you possibly can.
You know, when I started, I had sort of a mental image of something like sea tow, which if you're familiar with it, it's, there's a boat like every 30 miles or so. And when I began, I thought, wouldn't it be great if no matter where a veteran was, he was an hour away from a captain who would take him out fishing. So initially, that was my thought. Right now, I've got 3 boats, and it's really more than I can handle. I'm sort of at the tipping point for operating alone at this point. So although I would very much like to expand the program, I'm sort of held back, if you will, by the fact that I'm pretty much working alone.
What we do a lot on this show is how do we help? So what's your wish list? What do you need?
People, really. My business experience is very limited. I'm very comfortable and confident with the boating aspect of the program, but for the program to expand, it really needs someone with business experience, somebody who knows how to grow a program, someone who can handle the accounting and the bookkeeping. I can do all that, but to try to do all that and maintain my regular day job and run the trips as well is really sort of overwhelming.
Well, we hope that you get all of that once somebody hears all of this. What do you, Kathy, get from the stories that you've heard over the years from these folks that have laid their lives on the line for this country?
I feel incredibly humbled, honestly. When I first started, I felt like I knew what my job was. I was going to take them fishing and they were going to feel better. You know, I don't know why I thought it'd be that simple. But listening to their stories has been incredibly humbling, like the courage that they show and the spirit that they have. I have discovered that my job really is just to provide an opportunity for the guys to interact with each other and just basically get out of the way. Just kind of let it happen. And not every trip is a home run. Sometimes we've had some trips that have been major home runs, and other trips just end up being good fishing trips. But I have learned not to predict or assume that I know what the guys need. They really know what they need more than I do, so I just sort of get them out on the boat and give them a chance to experience it.
One story you can tell me that maybe from a trip that you sat back and thought, wow, this made a difference.
The goosebump story? Probably for me the most moving trip that we had was a trip, it was a couple years back, and we had a wide spread of guys. We had an 88-year-old guy from the Korean War on board with a 21-year-old who had just gotten back from Iraq and everybody in between. And the young guy who was just back from overseas would not talk. Dead quiet the whole trip. Wouldn't interact with anybody. And on the way back in, the older Korean combat vet said to me, "Put him on the wheel." So I was like, okay. So I asked him if he wanted to run the boat. And it was the first thing he said the whole trip, "Yes, ma'am." So he got behind the wheel, and within 100 feet, he had her straight as an arrow. And I was like, okay, that doesn't usually happen, but this is great. So then he took her right up New Haven, right up the harbor, straight up the channel, got into the side channel, which was a really tight turn, slowed her down in front of the marina without me even telling him what to do. He handled the boat beautifully. So I asked him when he finally got off the wheel, like, "Have you ever done this before?" And it was the first sentence he said the whole trip. He said, "Ma'am, she handles just like my tank." And as it turns out, the Korean War vet had operated a tank when he was in combat in Korea. So they started talking to each other. And while we were cleaning the boat and cleaning the fish, the two of them went off and had a long conversation down at the end of the dock. And when they came back, they shook hands. The older gentleman exchanged his email and phone number, and the young guy went off. And I said to the older gentleman, like, how did you know what he needed? Because I didn't know what he needed. He said he just needed to feel like himself again. That's all he needed. And once we made that connection, putting him on the wheel so he felt like he was driving his tank again, it all started to happen. So that trip for me was probably the most moving. I've had a lot of experiences like that, but that one really sticks in my mind.
Kathy Granfield, thanks so much for coming on,
Oh, thank you for
telling
having
us
me.
about what you're doing, and I hope you get all the help you need, and this goes nationwide for the folks that are serving our country.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Made a trivial pursuits when one this in. Who is this girl? Spend all night kissing, and the ball was right here. Then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked to find myself wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store of my mind just to save time. Skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, you know, you know that you need me.